So welcome back. We've had our Friday revision, our first Friday revision class, and I understand that it can feel a lot, and especially Fridays sometimes, especially in the first few weeks, it can feel like we're moving at a quick pace. Honestly, it starts to slow down later on, and it feels more manageable. As I said on Friday, that this first chapter in the course, it is a bit technical, abstract, and a bit artificial because I'm asking you to understand certain concepts and then apply them to English language, whilst they're actually Arabic concepts. They should be applied to Arabic sentences. We do more of that in chapter 2. So don't worry too much about not fully grasping things. And also, I find one of the biggest barriers to learning is people feel that they need to understand something then and there when I'm explaining to them. And most learning doesn't happen like that. Learning really happens where you just expose yourself time and time again with appropriately spaced repetition. And then it just slowly shifts and lands in your mind. And that's the importance of moving things from unconscious incompetence to unconscious incompetence to unconscious competence. That happens through the exposure. And the best way to expose, this is another mistake, well, not a mistake, but I think it makes things more difficult for people, is that they focus so much on the theory and don't get into the practice. So I prefer a little bit of theory. Obviously initially we need it as a map to go in, but focusing far more on practice and then understanding the gaps in our understanding, and then going back to theory just to what's the word I want to use, just to refine our understanding and build on our understanding. So don't worry too much, and if you ever get any problems, do reach out to me. It's natural to feel panicky and feel like you're not on top of things in the first few weeks. I allow myself usually a month before I get into the general flow of things, and I'm back at university, and at university I literally allowed myself 3 months just to almost just work things out. But obviously that doesn't mean you obviously do need to be able to get things, but all the technical things and navigating your way through all the materials, it does take a certain amount of time to do that. So this week we have been looking at the different categories of word in Arabic, and we've been looking at what's the differences between those. So obviously we've got noun, verb and particle. And what did I say about the noun? What did I say about the noun that helps us identify that something is a noun? And put that in the chat. Yeah, that's an important one. It's the talking point. It's the focus of the sentence. You can have a chinwag about it. That tells me it's a noun. If you can make it the focal point of the conversation, whether it be running, whether it be exercise, whether it be drawing, whether it be, love, that's the topic of the conversation. It must be a noun, because it can be the subject of the sentence. It can stand alone. Hold on, well done. That it stands alone in my mind. The noun is something that can be discussed. Yep, that's a topic of conversation. Independent meaning. All these are great. Yeah, exist, standalone. You can conceptualize it. Yes, Herbert. You can conceptualize it in itself, in its essence, like a concrete noun, like cat, house, or you can conceptualize it by way of association, like love. We said these abstract nouns that you can't conceptualize them in their essences, but you can conceptualize them in terms of their associations. So that makes it a noun. And that's the strongest one, because it can be conceptualized independently of itself. That's why the noun is the strongest element of the language. And good, Sophia, anything that replaces or can refer to a noun is a noun as well. That's important. With these words that are a bit more ambiguous, like this and that and there and what, etc., etc. So we said that all question markers like what, where, when, how, why, these are all nouns. Verbs. How do we identify a verb? Yeah, be careful saying that a verb is an action, because that's not necessarily true. Verbs can be actions that require a subject, but there could be states as well. Like, what was the most common verb that is a state that people often confuse with being a particle? The verb to be. Can you give me an example of the verb to be? Yeah, it requires a subject and it is in time. So you're going to have a noun before a verb. It's an action that has a noun before it that is the subject. And it's in either referring to past, present or future. Yeah, so is, am, are, was, were. This is the verb to be. And these are all verbs, not particles. And so it's weaker than a noun because it's reliant on two elements being there, i.e. it's in time and it has a subject, and then everything else is a particle. It's a process of elimination with the particle. So I know we said that why nouns mentioned first, because they're the strongest element. So with that in mind, unless you have any questions, I would like, Sundays generally I throw you as soon as I can into practice. We have 4 sentences here. And then when I come back, I'll talk about word patterns, actually. That's important. I'll talk about some of the resources. And then you have the vocabulary to go through again. So this is what I recommend doing vocab. And people have different styles, so it's just a guide. Is that you have this graph, or table, you fill it out, and notice the ones that you struggle to fill out. And then focus on them. Not the ones you keep getting right. Focus on the ones you keep getting wrong, and filling it out until you can fill out those ones that you are struggling. And the ones you struggle with, you start making word associations with. In the videos I spoke about how we need to make an association that is linked to something familiar, that has an emotional charge to it. That's how we remember vocabulary, and ideally in a context as well. The context helps for us to remember things. That has an emotional charge, that is out of the ordinary, and it's connected to something that we're already familiar with. Okay, any questions? We generally we come together at 10:02, so that gives you something to work towards. Unless I go through all the groups and I find everyone's finished, and then I'll break it. We come back afterwards. Something I wanted to stress as well that I've seen is that, you know, what often happens in our Arabic learning is we put pressure on ourselves to, like, add too much pressure, I'd say, and that causes us to be really activated and stressed. And obviously, to approach anything, we need an element of motivation. We need an element of pressure on us. There's no doubt about that. But if it causes to a point where we start panicking and we start getting really stressed, and what happens is that we fall into an activated state, what we call a sympathetic state. Not sympathetic in that you have sympathy. Sympathetic means you're an activated state, like a fight and flight state. And you can't learn when you're in that state. You need an element of, obviously, activation to push yourself sometimes. But if you stay stuck in that, you end up not being able to function. Your brain's not fully functioning, and you won't be able to absorb information. So it's really important that you just pace yourselves and give yourselves breaks, and to know that a lot of the learning that we do happens in the rest, not in the exposure. I think that's a nice way to make ourselves understand that we need to rest between learnings and just do things that almost don't require a lot of thought or a lot of active engagement. And if our lives are like stressed all the time and we're always worrying, it's going to impact our learning. So for the sake of learning, you all need to have some me time, like whether that's a spa or whatever it is for you. Have some chill time. Right, let's crack on. So I'm going to go through these. The particle, rabbit noun, 8 verb, the particle, carrot noun, the particle, rabbit noun, 8 verb, the particle, carrot noun. Is that clear for everybody? So the is a particle. Often people will say it's a noun because it's attached to a noun. So saying, look, it refers to a noun. Yeah, but it can't replace a noun. If I remove carrot, the is not able to stand alone. Whereas if I said the rabbit ate this carrot, if I remove carrot, I can say that a rabbit ate this. That can stand alone. So this is a noun, but not the. 2. The particle. Blue, noun. Now I know it's an adjective in English, but adjectives are a subcategory of nouns, and we'll explain that in a later chapter. So what the point of this is, adjectives are nouns, inherent nouns that can stand alone. So in English we may say blue. In English, in Arabic we say a blue thing, or a blue one, or a blue person. It can literally stand alone in that way. Like for example, big. If I say big, in Arabic it's literally a big one, or a big thing, or a big person. It can stand alone, but in English adjectives don't stand alone like that. And so we need to add something when we translate, like thing or one. So blue, noun, car, noun, hit, verb, into, particle, the particle, door, noun, of, particle, the particle, house, noun. So like into and of, you can't, once you say them, once you isolate them, they have no, you can't conceptualize anything, so they can't be. And you can't put a subject before them. You can't say I of you, I into you. Wrestling, noun, because it's a subject to the sentence. Is, verb, not particle, because it's a verb to be. What, noun. I know a lot of you might have said particle, but it refers to something. If I say, what is that? It's a cat. The what that you're asking is referring to the cat. So all you need to know is what, who, why, where. These are all nouns in Arabic. What, so noun, I, noun, want, a verb. Next, where, noun, will, particle. In our English, it's actually a verb. It's a modal verb, but here it's supporting the main verb, which is go, so it is a particle. Anything that supports something is usually a particle in that sense. You, noun, go, verb, from, particle, here, noun, because here refers to somewhere. So anything that refers or can replace a noun is a noun. Is that clear for everybody? So that's a bit more practice. The way you could practice this more is, say you're reading something in English, just have a practice. Don't stress yourself out about it, but just, random sort of inquiry of a sentence and see if you can identify the things. Just you'll notice in the Wistia portal that we have many documents there. One of them is word patterns. Those word patterns are probably not that useful to you at the moment. They will become more useful to you later, which I take the roots, because all Arabic words go back to 3-letter roots, the trilateral, and then we get words that have that branch off, that come from those roots, and I'll explain that later. So, and that helps us. We realize many words go back to 3-letter roots, and we have a inherent sort of essential meaning of that root, which helps us understand a lot of the words that branch off. We will look into that far deeper at the moment. You don't have to worry about that too much at the moment. But if you have any questions about the documents in lesson 1, just focus on lesson 1, the little different documents. Please do reach out to me. I got Moment Pin working, so I've invited many of you to the group. If you are on Moment Pin, the app, if you're not on that, reach out to me and I'll explain how to do that. But now you can start conversing. I did post something on the Moment Pin app so that we are starting to engage with that. There is a dictionary I recommend people purchase. We don't need it at the moment, we need it halfway through the course, but it's probably worth getting it early because I don't know how many. It's recently been reprinted at a far cheaper price than it was before. Originally it was a hardbound book and it was about £200, between 150 to 200, sometimes £250 I've seen online. It's now been printed in paperback and it's about 60. All other dictionaries will not be useful to you. This is the most useful one and accessible one for the Quran. It is called the HDO. This is a hard copy book, so this is not the one. It doesn't look like this in paperback. Arabic English Dictionary of Quranic Usage. If someone wants to put on the Moment Pin, send a link to that, or WhatsApp me and I can send you a link to it on Amazon if you wish to get that. That's the only resource you'll need in this course. Another thing that might be useful, one more thing, but this is a bit advanced at the moment, is what we call Al-Mu'jam al-Mufahras. Again, I can send a link for this. Is that it's I've forgotten what you call a fihras in English. It's like a dictionary, but it tells you the word and where it's found in the Quran and how many verses in the Quran come with this word throughout the Quran. It gives them all there. That's very useful as well. So it's called Al-Mu'jam al-Mufahras. I will try to see if you can get it on Amazon. I don't know because it's an Arabic book. That can be quite useful, but you don't need these things at the moment. They're more for your learning as you go on as you learn to engage with the Quran more. So how are we doing for time? Oh, we're nearly. So again, the vocabulary, I'm not going to go through it. Apart from some people have some interesting questions. One person said, how do you translate Rahman ar-Rahim? Well, you can say merciful, beneficent, kind, whatever you want to say. More important for me is understanding the nuances, and that is that Rahman means it's a demonstrative description of the mercy of Allah. So when you see it happening and it's profound and it's undeniable, like the mother covering the child in the heat of the, under the heat of the sun, like the Prophet ﷺ, who was in the company of the Sahaba after the battle of Hunain, and he saw one mother run out from amongst the people who were captives and shaded her child, not completely oblivious to what was going on around her, and they were so just overwhelmed by the compassion this mother had. That's seeing the mercy of Allah in the creation that's undeniable. So that's the Rahman of Allah. It's a demonstrative quality there. Whilst Rahim is an innate quality that might not be obvious to people, but it is always there. And so an example I usually give is an artist. You see an artist actually painting, that's demonstrative. You see it there, you can't deny it's there in the moment happening. Rahim he's walking down the street, he's not painting, but the way he carries himself and the way he's known is that he's an artist. And so it's an innate quality there that's not necessarily being demonstrated. Also with the verbs like dhahaba and kharaja, so someone asked, how do you translate them? Out of context, you can translate them as to go or to sit, qaida, kharaja, to leave. But I prefer you to translate them as they will be seen in a sentence, which is he sat or he went or he left. Putting it in the past in the third person, i.e. he, masculine. So that's a better way of doing it, just so you get used to, when you see it in a sentence, that's how you're going to translate it. You're never going to translate it in a sentence as to go, and so forth. And another question people had about, how do I know if I've got fatha or kasra or dhamma on these words like ism here, or Allah, this alif with the squiggle. In the Mughal script, which Pakistanis and subcontinent communities are more familiar with for the Quran, you actually never see this. You don't see this alif with a squiggle like that. It's just left with nothing on it. But in the Nasakh, the Saudi copies of the Quran, you have it like this, and what you put on it, it depends on the context, and we're going to study that later.